A friend from my hometown, a rural village in Eastern Europe, once told me an interesting story. He said that when he was a child and his grandfather was still alive, the grandfather told him several times that there was something he needed to tell him once he got older. However, the grandfather passed away before he could reveal what it was. A few years later, during a conversation with his grandmother, my friend mentioned that his grandfather had wanted to tell him something, and that he regretted never finding out what it was. The grandmother then said that the grandfather had claimed all his life that something terrifying had happened to him when he was young. Judging by my friend's age, I'd estimate that the event took place sometime in the 1950s or 1960s. And the story goes like this. At that time, people didn't yet have tractors, and agricultural work was still done using horses. Sometimes they even worked at night, because the moonlight made everything visible, and working at night helped them avoid the heat of summer days. So, one night, in the dead of night, after working in the fields, the grandfather was returning home. At a crossroads between dirt paths, the horses suddenly stopped. At the intersection stood some kind of creature, maybe a demon or something else which had horns and goat legs. The creature spoke to the grandfather in local language and said it would give him a riddle, and if he couldn't solve it, it would kill him. Naturally, the grandfather was terrified and urged the horses to run back toward the field. The creature grabbed onto the back of the wagon and tried to stop it, but the grandfather managed to get away, reached the field, and eventually returned to the village. The creature didn't want to step onto the field and remained on the road. According to my friend's story, I know roughly where this alleged event might have taken place, and today there is a Christian cross with Jesus at that very crossroads. Perhaps it's not there by coincidence. Personally, I'm a big skeptic when it comes to anything paranormal, and I've never experienced anything unexplainable myself. I've heard and read about various paranormal encounters, but I've never come across a story quite like this one.
Not exactly my story, but it does include me. My mother told me this story from when I was a baby, about 2 years old, I believe. For some context, there was my father, my mother, 2 of my older brothers, and me. We just moved into a house for the first time, and it had an attic, main floor, and a basement. The basement contained the bedrooms. There was one specific room that had some steps, which basically made it slightly lower than the rest. It was the biggest room, so my eldest brother claimed it. After a week, my brother complained about the lack of sleep and did not like the room. He kept saying something felt off. My other brother asked to switch, since he always wanted the biggest room. A week later, the same thing happened to him. He can't sleep right. The room feels wrong and he claims to see things in the dark. My mother believes that it might just be a placebo effect, mixed with young children moving to a new home they aren't familiar with. She then moves me in the room instead. I was there for 3 days and would cry each time it was bedtime. I would wake up and scream my lungs out until I lost my voice. On the 3rd day, after my father went to work and my brothers were getting ready for school, my mother decided to throw baby powder everywhere in the room. She would blast it on the floor everywhere, covering it all. Something felt off. She took off with me and my brothers. We had our day like usual. Once everyone got home, my mother went into my room. Traces of 3 clawed human-sized footprints were everywhere. The floor, the walls, and even the ceiling. My mother called my father in a frenzy at the sight. We moved out a week later. The door was locked during that time, and I was moved in my parents' room for the time being.
So I met this strange street person in Hollywood who calls himself Zion. Me and my acquaintances started seeing him roam around Hollywood shortly after I arrived to the area. Maybe 2 weeks after me. This dude was strange. Tattoos all over his arms and face, including ancient symbols for planets and whatnot. Well, one evening I noticed something strange about him. I could have swore one of his large tattoos was on his other arm. I began paying close attention to this, and yup, his tattoos definitely changed position every other night or so. I alerted my acquaintances to this, and they were a bit skeptical, and rightly so. They ended up agreeing that they would pay attention as well. One night I went up to these 2 acquaintances while they were at work, and once they saw me, they started freaking out. You're right. His tattoos are changing positions. These were real tattoos. Not henna, not painted on. Real bona fide tats. This freaked not only the 3 of us out, but it also freaked out several of our other acquaintances that worked in the immediate area. Not a ghost story, but it is freaky. and was witnessed by multiple other people.
When I was around 14 years old, now 33, I still vividly remember. I was over at a friend's house. Her mom left for groceries and we were sitting at her dining table. I was facing the sitting area, and we were just talking. I was also watching her cat and constantly saw him staring at the painting above the couch for long periods. He kept walking past the couch and just looking. I didn't mention it because, well, cats. Then all of a sudden the painting was swinging left and right in a very wild way and fell off the wall. It almost fell on her cat, which dashed away scared. I screamed to my friend, "OMG, your painting just fell off your wall for no reason," she quickly said to ran to her neighbor, an old man in his 80s who my friend knew well. We told him what happened. He responded with, "Well, Mead, Dutch word for little girl. I constantly see things around here." I was horrified. I believe there really was an entity in her house. There also had been multiple times that the TV channels were randomly switched in my friend's bedroom. When she went to grab something in other rooms and the remote, then randomly disappeared under her bed or under other furniture. I later heard that a friend of my friend had claimed to see a little girl walking through the apartment hall and had seen a pencil on a table floating up and down.
I found an army of ghost warriors in Hawaii, named Night, when I was solo hiking and checking out some old hidden ruins. I had just arrived in Hawaii less than 24 hours prior and never heard of them before. I went solo hiking at Lula Falls and heard there were some old ruins and another waterfall nearby, so I stopped to see if I could find them. I worked my way to the ruins. About a minute after turning off my camera, I heard a bunch of drums in the distance and some singing, chanting in a language I didn't understand, and some voices saying my name. It was Oahu. I figured it was a luau tourist group. It was getting louder and louder, and I was getting pissed from the noise. I saw a guy on the other side of the ruins near the trees. Super buff, barely any clothes on, red feather cape, completely white eyes, holding a torch and spear. Bunch of shadowy silhouettes behind him in a long line. I thought they were I turned my face away, looking at him through the side eye, taking glances at him. He had no foot. I thought he was disabled. I assumed his other foot was hidden behind grass. All of a sudden, an extremely disgusting smell happened right in back of me. Reminded me of roadkill. I turned around to see where it was coming from, but saw nothing. Then the drums got even louder, like they were right there in back of me. I turned around and I saw the guy gone. I walked towards where the drums were, listening to see where they were coming from. I assumed hidden speakers. Look at the ground. No dig marks. Then I tracked the sound to its source. It was coming from the middle of thin air, 4 or 5 feet off the ground. I began hyperventilating and took a few steps back, far away from the drum sound. I thought I was hallucinating. I was covering my face with my hands and trying to gather my thoughts and relax my mind. Next thing I knew, my forehead experienced one of the worst pains I ever felt in my life. A sharp, searing pain. I was 100% certain a seizure was going to come. I tried to relax my mind. Next thing, I knew I was overcome with the feeling of acceptance and peace in the feeling I would not die. For a while I continued covering my face, just trying to maintain a calm mind so I would not have a seizure. The whole time my head in excruciating pain. There were drums banging super loud, feet stomping sound, them singing a lot of stuff with ka in it. My body felt like it wanted to kneel at one point. During it, I had all sorts of weird feelings and sensations I don't want to talk about, and a ton of pain in my head. Eventually the drums and pain stopped and a super loud horned conch sound thing blasted. So loud, I had to cover my ears. I assumed it was some sort of security alert nearby. I saw 2 light orb things in the distance. I looked at the ruins, paid my respects to King Kamehameha, and left fast.
I'll try and keep it somewhat short. So my dad's basement is finished. When you walk down the stairs, you're looking at the back of the couch that's about 15 feet away. Between the stairway and couch on the left is a door to a storage room with the washer and dryer. And there's also a fridge and deep freezer to keep extra food and drinks. My dad is disabled from work injuries and rarely goes downstairs. It's almost always my stepmom because she's much more mobile. Anyways, on this particular evening, I was downstairs sitting on the couch playing video games. My stepmom was out of town for a few days. I heard faint, slow footsteps coming down the stairs, and it sounded how my dad would ease his way down them. I didn't think much of it. Just thought maybe he was coming down to get something from the storage room. I then felt an intense presence behind me. When I was younger, my dad would often stop and watch me play video games for a minute when he would come downstairs. So again, not thinking much of it, I said, "Hey Dad, what's up?" Nothing, no reply. He's hard of hearing, so I got up and went in the storage room, assuming he had already walked away. The lights were off and he wasn't in there. I went upstairs and my dad was laid up on the couch watching TV. I asked him if he was downstairs and he replied, "No." My dad is an old biker that worked construction his entire adult life. He has never been one to mess around. He's stone-faced and stoic almost. 7. If a word comes out of his mouth, there's no questioning it.